Welcome to Diabetes Innovators, a special series from Diabetics Doing Things covering the 85th scientific sessions. Were held in June 2025 in Chicago, Illinois. You're going to hear interviews from leaders of tech companies, people with diabetes, diabetes creators, researchers, and more on this podcast. If you want to learn more or hear more from this series, visit diabeticsdoingthings.com/diabetes innovators. Enjoy the episode. Okay, let's talk about our partners who help support this podcast. Today, I'm going to talk about Type Zero, which is typezerohealth.com. It is a business run and founded by a person with type 1 diabetes, John Jensen, who's been on this podcast a couple of times. I've been using this product since 2018. I started training for a half marathon, which I ran in Dallas in December 2018. I was looking for a workout supplement, a pre-workout that I could trust not to spike my blood sugar. And so that's what I've got here in my hand is the clean pre-workout. I use the stim-free version, which doesn't have caffeine, and I trust it. And I've used it now. So 2018, it'll be almost 7 years for me using this pre-workout. It really works for me because I can drink it late in the day. And most of my basketball leagues that I'm playing in now are late at night. So I might have a game from 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m. And I can make sure that I'm able to get up and play and also be able to fall asleep later that night so I can wake up in the morning, go to work and meet the demands of my life. Type Zero has gone a step further this year in our partnership, and they've launched the Rob Howe Stack, which also includes a couple of my other favorite products, creatine monohydrate, which I've been taking the past 2 years. And if you want to look up all of the good reasons you should be taking creatine, many scientists and performance coaches say if they could only take one supplement, creatine monohydrate would be the one that they chose. I agree, not only for the physical benefits, but also the mental focus and clarity. It's good for your brain. Do yourself a favor and add creatine monohydrate to your stack. Something I've also added is this clean hydration and electrolytes pack. I'll show you one of the little sticks. These are a lot smaller than some of the leading competitive brands because they just don't have as much salt in them. And there's no additives either. So you're not looking at any carbohydrates, nothing that you need a bolus for. And hydration is an essential part of anyone who has diabetes should be making sure that they're hydrated. And it's not just about drinking water. You need salt, you need magnesium, you need a little bit of the vitamin C and some vitamin B. There's a ton of zinc, selenium, chromium, all of the good electrolytes in this supplement. You mix the stick pack with 16 to 20 ounces of water, helps you get hydrated. I've been doing mine in the beginning of the day to start my day and make sure that I'm hydrated. And it helps with your insulin sensitivity. It helps me have some clarity and make sure that, I'm not a very disciplined hydrator when I'm sitting at my computer all day. It's good to be reminded to make sure that you're getting your hydration in. And it's a little bit more interesting to drink than just water. So you can get these as part of the Rob Howe pack, or you can get them on your own. You can get them on Amazon or directly from typezerohealth.com. And when you order from typezerohealth.com, if you use code Rob Howe, that'll save you 20%. So they've got some great sales going on really regularly. So if you can't save more with a promo that they're running, use code Rob Howe and you'll always get that 20% off. And your support helps them support the podcast. So if you are a person with diabetes who's looking for a reliable supplements company that's not going to spike your blood sugar, that's going to get you into the mode to be the higher performer that you are, I recommend, and I take Type Zero. I wouldn't recommend a product that I don't use myself. So please support typezerohealth.com, code Rob Howe, and search the Rob Howe stack to see which supplements I take and get a good deal on those as well. Okay, let's get to the episode. I also want to take this opportunity to promote Diabetes Legends basketball clinics. As you guys know, the last couple of years, we've started to do basketball clinics all throughout the country under our Diabetes Legends Basketball Clinics name. We've gotten to introduce over 100 campers with type 1 diabetes to diabetes legends like Lauren Cox and Gary Forbes and more. We've got 3 clinics coming up this year, a very special event at Friends for Life conference on July 11th, and then later in September, we're going to be returning to Denver. If you're looking for more information on the events themselves, you can visit diabeticsdoingthings.com/events. And if you're interested in learning more about the Diabetes Legends Foundation, which we formed in 2025 to better support our ongoing initiatives in creating opportunities for kids with diabetes to have a great day with diabetes via one of our clinics, please connect with us and fill out a form on our website, diabeticsdoingthings.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Riddell from the School of Kinesiology and Muscle Health Research Center at York University in Toronto, Canada.
We were just talking about, you were on the planning committee for ADA scientific sessions. So now here at the event, all that work sort of coming to fruition.
Yeah, it's amazing. My first experience on the planning committee, I'm in charge of all the exercise-related content of the conference, but it's fun to meet people who are doing research and cures and innovations and technology, but it is a ton of work, but now it feels like it's worth it because I get to see all the action here live.
Yeah, it's doing this series basically to talk about all the diabetes innovations, and I'm excited to hear like you, I'm excited and have a vested interest in anything cure related or therapy
Yeah.
related. But on the diabetes and exercise side, I'd love to know what are the big innovations that you're seeing around diabetes and exercise, or what are the sort of themes at this year's scientific sessions?
In the type 1 space, we are seeing lots of studies related to try to minimize hypoglycemia with exercise. We know that exercise can kind of increase your insulin sensitivity and cause your blood sugars to drop, often causing low blood sugar, as you and I both know
Yeah,
firsthand.
all too well.
We're seeing that there are strategies that use different AID settings, so changing insulin delivery that's better for when you're active compared to when you're sedentary and
Sure.
eating. That requires innovation in bioengineering, but also sensing when people are exercising using wearables. We're seeing that here. We're also seeing some different nutritional strategies. There's a great poster I just was at looking at whey protein as a supplement prior to exercise. We often gravitate to carbs, but it looks like some branched chain amino acids are improving glucagon's response to exercise and
Interesting.
allowing our blood sugar to be better balance. We are seeing strategies around exercise education to break down some of the barriers and fears that people might have if they're on insulin to exercise.
Sure.
Our friend and colleague Desi Zaharaeva is here with Diabetes Wise, and they're presenting stuff on the educational modules and how they're making newly diagnosed young people with type 1 a little less fearful to exercise for health reasons. I think that's great.
Well, I think you touched on a couple of really big things like hypos and exercise. They go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
And especially if you're just getting started. I try to remember so much of my life in general has been influenced by sport and
Yes.
exercise and being an athlete. And my life with diabetes is no different because from the beginning, I was exercising, strenuously with diabetes and got to learn about it there.
Right.
But
And your story's neat to me because you adopted technology soon on after your diagnosis, but you were still doing very competitive athletics. And you could say that the pump was great in some situations, like overnight, but you still realize that exercise gave all sorts of challenges,
it was
still, even
it
with
was
the
tricky.
best technology.
And with no CGM at that time widely used. Today I think about what it would look like being on an AID system, and competitive college athletics would be very interesting.
At least you'd sleep better, probably.
For sure, for sure. My mom would probably call me less. That was for sure.
Mine too.
I think though, for people just getting started with exercise, like hypos, like you said, insulin sensitivity, or they've got insulin on board and they bottom out in a workout.
Yeah.
They have a bad feeling, or maybe they have some anxiety around hypos.
Yes.
Anything that can kind of limit that or make you feel more confident would be a big impact.
It would be. And we are learning from data that's presented here that exercise at certain times of day are more risky for hypoglycemia. If you exercise later in the afternoon, when maybe 1 to 2 hours after you've had a bolus of insulin, that's a high risk time of day for a hypo in exercise and then another hypo overnight. Learning how to modify behaviors so that they're less risky and more attuned to glycemic stability. We're learning from studies presented here. Like in the morning before a bolus is a pretty safe time to do a bit of exercise.
You mentioned Diabetes Wise and Desi, our mutual and amazing athlete and researcher. You guys, as a group, there was like a global cohort of diabetes researchers, like released a position statement around AID and exercise. And I really like the visualizations in that.
Thank you.
Because exactly what you're talking about with the time of day and the different systems and like what to think about. So
yes.
The 3 types of exercise, whether it's aerobic resistance or high intensity interval training. What was that like putting that together and those different learnings with that group?
It was a lot of fun. And my hat's off to Desi and Otmar Moser, who were the co-first authors for that. I played a supporting leadership role, but we were able to get almost 20 international experts who'd work with athletes, who'd work with AID systems, who'd work with average patients who were new to exercise, and putting our heads together about what's the best approach to minimize both hypo and hyperglycemia, which can happen too, as you know. And what was unique about this is that we created a paper that follows the type of AID system you're on. Because as you know, there's quite a few now. We've got Omnipod 5 out in Canada now, which is great. You've had it here for a while. We've got Tandem Control IQ. We've got Medtronic 780. They're all a little bit different in their technology and their language. And we wanted to create a position statement that walked healthcare providers and patients, we hope, what to do with their particular device. And I think that's the first of its kind.
I found it really enlightening, and I got to see because of the animations and the different
cartoons,
the illustrations
yeah.
are really easy to say, okay, well, this is what I do. And for me, I was like, okay, well, intuitively through trial and error, I've learned when I play golf, I have a different approach than when I play basketball or when I'm doing a strength exercise. And so to be able to see that labeled out and in those illustrations was really helpful.
Thanks. It might seem complex. It is. And it might
Yeah,
seem that we have all the answers, and we don't. There is still so much we need to learn. And these are just starting point recommendations, but
sure.
people, as you know, have to find what works for them. What diet approach, how to set their technology systems into an activity mode, or when to take it in and out. This is an individualized experience living with type 1, as you know.
Well, I think that's what often gives so many people, myself included, a headache, right? Is because one day to another, one week to another, one year to another, one person to another,
Yeah.
managing diabetes is
It
complicated.
makes it hard to give advice that's so personalized. But people like you, you're inspiration to people that are diagnosed because you show that you can problem solve. You show that you've got some basic knowledge that over time with the duration of your diabetes, you're going to learn more and more and more and share those stories. And what might work for you playing basketball, what might not be what I need for when I go for a bike ride. But as long as we share our experiences and share our
Right.
knowledge, I think we're going to help our community.
And I think that like pushes things forward, right? It helps
Yeah.
people get started earlier. And I'm grateful for that as well. Like I often say on the podcast, like I'm just the N of one of myself. I met with myself and I get to learn from your own N of one and then also the
Right.
research that you and your lab do.
And the tech companies, at least the ones in academia, are realizing that our ends of ones add up over time. And
Sure.
our systems in the future could be using our own data to better optimize the settings for stress and exercise
Sure.
and different meals. And I think that is something that we can both look forward to in coming iterations of these so-called closed loop systems that are more personalized to our physiology and our behaviors.
Well, and that's what was interesting. I was in a session this morning on the role of artificial intelligence in a clinical standpoint and the idea of a personalized diabetes regimen through a closed loop system for a person or even an archetype of a person is particularly exciting and seemingly not so far away.
No, I've had the pleasure of working with both of those presenters, Rehan Lau, I think it was, and I think Pete Jacobs from OHSU. These are bioengineers or clinicians who really are visionary about what could happen with AI technology and precision medicine for our ends of ones.
When you think of like AID systems, like where we are today and where we're going, does it make it easier or simpler rather, I think, to exercise or with T1D, like planned or unplanned? Like, so from my end of my experience, I find that maybe it's more predictable if I than if I was just on a either manual injections or a pump with no closed loop or hybrid closed loop. But I still have to learn what my body's going to do in those workouts, and maybe the first time isn't always as smooth.
There's always pros and cons to any new technology. You and I were diagnosed at a time where we didn't have continuous glucose monitors. So we would have taken our needles and we would have not thought about our sugars all that much unless we felt we weren't playing well or feeling well. But now we're seeing our data change minute by minute. That extra information, it's good, but it can also kind of hamper us because it's like data overload and my numbers are starting to go up a little bit or down a little bit. Whereas you and I probably just would have finished playing our game unless we had a severe low or severe high. So it always comes with the realization that we have to expect the unexpected and know how to adapt and manipulate our behaviors, our food intake, the settings on our pump. It's not a hands-off disease. No matter how great the technology is, it's still not a hands-off. And we have to carry that burden of always thinking and looking at it, which can be tough.
I heard a quote recently from an Olympic sprinting coach, and they were asking about like force plates and exercise science and technology has come a long way in recent years, and he was saying that his perspective on his team was to make sure that they had the latest and greatest technology and rely on it as little as possible.
Wouldn't that be great if we could do that with our closed loop system? Like, wouldn't that be great? But we are not there yet.
Not quite. It is exciting though to see some of the papers that are being published, some of the posters that are out, and some of the studies on at least early phase of what could potentially be therapies that would make it a little bit easier to live on these things.
That's a great point. I'm sure you're talking to people who are talking about other drugs and medications that are changing our health and physiology. I can tell you about one that you may not know of.
Yeah, I would love to.
There is some research that's presented here and talked about here. It's a drug that is normalizing our glucagon response to hypoglycemia or exercise. Glucagon is a hormone that can help raise your blood
Right.
sugars. And we need glucagon if we have a severe hypoglycemic, or actually we might get an injection of it. But people with diabetes can make glucagon, but we tend not to release it normally. And this company is got a new medication that will allow the glucagon to come out of the pancreas and get into the bloodstream and keep our blood sugars up. So that's exciting. Other medications are working on glucose stability. The incretin therapy is interesting. Not a lot of incretin therapy in type 1, but lots of GLP-1 and
Yep.
receptor agonists in type 2. And I think that might have applications in type 1 for glucose stability and weight control and all these other things.
There's a few studies coming out here at that are talking about. I know a study, the Adjust T1D, semaglutide and T1D, and
That's right.
Being released here at the
And
scientific studies.
sotagliflozin, which is a type of an SGLT antagonist. There's data presented this afternoon about the importance of that agent for kidney health in type 1. We have to remember that we got to keep our kidneys functioning, and it's a drug that could have some benefits for us.
That's exciting. I think, we're continuing to learn so much about the system. We had a guest on the podcast talk about the beta cells are less than 1 gram of cells, and they're less than 1% of the pancreas size, and they manage your diabetes, they manage your blood glucose and glucagon perfectly forever until they don't. And so these such small little things making really big impacts.
Isn't it amazing that they presented last night the Vertex data to show that the Islet transplants, I think there was almost all of the participants who got the transplants were still off insulin. Maybe the couple were taking a bit of insulin. So
I believe it was like 9 of.
How did that make you feel to hear that they might be on the verge of a cure? Maybe.
I saw the charts, and some of the patients in the study had really difficult glucose control, like not very well managed. And then to see like the 3-month slices of the data, and then the first 3 months they're like much tighter control, and then to be completely in range for that next one.
And no hypoglycemia, and then no need for these AID systems or insulin bolus. Like, that's pretty encouraging.
It is. And I think, you're talking about, we've had other researchers from TixieMed, Tix100, they're talking about a drug that would eliminate hypoglycemia. You take that, and as well as managing with a hybrid closed loop system, like now you're slowly chipping away.
We are chipping away. There's still work to be done, but it does look good. Exciting to be here and see what's going on.
What did you think of the Vertex data? Like, you've lived with diabetes a little longer than I have, but like, to see, those 9 people.
Yeah, I was inspired. Absolutely inspired. Yeah. My son has type 1. I wish that when he was diagnosed, there was that opportunity, but I know friends who are at this meeting whose children have positive antibodies, and there might be something for these kids. It's incredible.
I had lunch with the family. One of the kids has type 1, and the other is in phase 1, and thankfully they're still not diagnosed with type 1 yet. But as these things are coming out, they're in a study with to be ready to take the Tzield.
Teplizumab, to modify the immune reaction
and hopefully
slow it down or
slow
delay
it. Yeah. And so, to think, having lunch with them today, thinking about 20 years ago,
wouldn't have been a thought. Right?
To have an idea that could be possible is pretty encouraging.
It is very encouraging.
So anything else that you're excited about from an exercise and diabetes standpoint?
I think I've told you everything I can think about right now. We've got education initiatives. We've got new hormones, new drugs. We've got AID systems that could be integrated with wearables to kind of quantify when we do activity. I think there's other stuff going on, but those are the big ones that I saw.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, like the shift between like Oura Ring and Dexcom, for example, like a consumer electronics and exercise brand integrating, adding the glucose piece of it.
I can't see the harm of getting more sensors in more people's hands. Well, I'll tell you one interesting story. We put sensors on an elite soccer club in Europe, like one of the top soccer clubs in the world. They have one player with diabetes. He was not on our study. So everybody on the team did not have diabetes. They wore these sensors, and their glucoses were going up because of the intense competition. So we're learning so much by putting sensors on people who have pre-diabetes, early type 2, healthy, elite athletes. So we're learning a lot, and it doesn't hurt to know this, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about that for a second, because I think the access to CGM for people with diabetes is a no-brainer. Like we have to have that, and Canada does it better than the U.S. As well. But one thing that's really interesting to me, and I got this from learning a little bit about like lack of sleep and its impact on your blood glucose, and how really, as you'll know, as somebody who went through medical school, there's those times where you're not sleeping very well at all.
Like last night for me,
exactly at 88, right? And so even a week or two of suboptimal sleep can really affect your insulin sensitivity.
I think so, yeah.
And I think for us, with people with diabetes, we think that maybe that's the diabetes that's doing that, and it's really these other factors. So I agree with you.
The physiology that is taxed because of lack of sleep or poor diet or stress at work or maybe an intense competitive professional sporting event. Like that's as stressful as as an athlete. It's stressful, and it has its impacts on the body, and you can see it in things like heart rate and blood pressure, and you can see it in glucose. That's kind of cool.
And a healthy body without diabetes is going to release insulin to bring down that. And so that's something I think I had to, that was the first real diabetes challenge I had in my life and in my athletic career. Was so much stress on my mind for performance. I wanted to play. I wanted to do well. I was nervous. I wanted us to win. And all of that adrenaline and cortisol drove my fasting blood sugar from, 80 milligrams per deciliter to up in the 300-400s.
Right.
With no food. And that was like, really had to.
It looks like you ate cake, but you just.
Yeah. And so I think now, like, if I had a graph and I've been able to see that would have been great information. Like you said, could have been overwhelming at the time, but learning about the stress and adrenaline,
and seeing that the athletes who don't have diabetes have this little bump in their glucose, but because their body can secrete insulin, it brings it back down. What we're doing right now with a study that is funded through the Helmsley Trust is you've done discussions about the inhaled Technosphere insulin.
Yeah.
We're looking at active athletes with type 1 who get this rise in their glucose. They may even be on a closed loop system. We give them a little bit of that inhaled insulin, and it brings their glucose down much more quickly, and we're not seeing hypoglycemia. So these little strategies might have helped us.
Oh, absolutely.
They might have helped us.
And I think while we're talking about the inhaled insulin or Afrezza, for those listening, the fast in, fast out is really the best. I think even overnight hyperglycemia, I feel more comfortable treating it.
Sometimes. Have you tried it?
I have. Yeah. I like using it for, especially on a time I'm maybe on an airplane, and so I'm sedentary.
They don't kick you off the airplane for bringing out the inhaler.
They don't kick me off for doing the inhaler, but they might if I did lunges up and down the hallway. Yeah. It allows me to get my sugar down without having to rage bolus, so to speak, or on the pump. And I think now, like with the auto correction boluses and things, like it's easier to manage those, and you're starting to behave more like a pancreas would.
Yes.
Which is exciting. But when you really want that, because you know how it is, especially when you're an athlete and you've taken yourself out of competition and you're trying to get your glucose back in range, like you want to do it as fast as you can.
Isn't it funny that carbs can bring our sugars up pretty quickly, but insulin, it's not that quick to bring it down, at least when you infuse it or inject it. This could offer a bit of a solution. We're doing a study where if you have the Afrezza or inhaled insulin at noon, what happens at 2 p.m. with exercise? Like maybe it's a bit safer because, as you said, it's a faster on and off.
Right.
So we're comparing those scenarios, high blood sugars. So maybe we'll learn more for next year's chat.
Man, I'm ready to nerd out. I need to visit the lab. It's so long overdue. But when you're thinking about like diabetes and high performance, like it's just minuscule decisions, and they always say it's a game of inches, right?
It's a game of.
You got to really like try to figure out the details.
Yeah, we say millimeters.
Yeah, you guys. yeah, for sure.
That's great.
Great. Well, I'm going to call you Dr. Riddell, but Mike, thank you so much for
Rob. It's always a pleasure to sit and just chat, brainstorm, and celebrate what you're doing and what our research and clinical community is doing for all of us who live with diabetes, whatever type, form, or.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is. And thank you so much for your time and generosity and kind words as well. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.